Hello and welcome to the Mindful Money interview. I'm John Lappin, editor of Mindful Money, and today I'm talking to Tom McPhail, pension expert at Hargreaves Lansdown, about the rising retirement age and what people can do about it. Hello Tom.
Hello John.
So some of the headlines are suggesting that the retirement age is actually accelerating away from people. Could you just go through what the situation is now in terms of when people can retire?
So the government's playing catch up on this, and to a degree, yes, it is accelerating, but that's only because the problem's been neglected before now. So the first thing the government had to do was to get pension ages equalised, and it's doing that. And so by 2018, we'll have got to that. And then it's brought forward an increase in the state pension age to 66 for everybody by 2020. And then we're going to go on to age 67 by the late 2020s. By 2028. But the problem the government had after that was it all slowed down, and we didn't then get up to age 68 until the mid-2040s, and that was too late. So we knew they were going to have to do something. And they're now saying that if you're in your mid-late 40s today, you should expect to be looking at a state pension age of 68. And if you're in your early mid-30s today or younger, you should expect age 69. And they didn't go on and say it, but I think we can probably interpret from that as well that if you're in your 20s today, you should probably be assuming age 70 is where you're likely to end up in the fullness of time.
Now, there was a little bit of detail in around the autumn statement, and it particularly dealt with people around and near the retirement age. And that suggested that if they paid a little bit of extra national insurance, they could actually upgrade their state pension. So just to clarify what the situation is with them, first of all.
So we've already got a system where if you're coming up to retirement, you can buy some additional years of state pension if you don't have a full national insurance contribution record, and that is a fantastically good deal. So anybody that has gaps in their record should do that. It's a good investment for most people. But Steve Webb wants to go further than that, and he's now suggesting that even after you've reached retirement, from 2015 onwards, if you wanted to top up your additional state pension, this is what used to be SERPs and became the S2P, that you can buy some chunks of that as well. But the catch is, it's going to be on less generous terms. It's going to be what he's describing as actuarially neutral. And so it will be based purely on your life expectancy. It won't be such a generous deal, but if you want to plug some gaps in your national insurance record, in your state pension, you'll be able to do that.
Okay, now we've discussed people in their 30s and 40s and the retirement ages they're looking at. So, and they're seeing it move slightly further away than they might have expected. What can they be doing now to do something about that?
I think we're moving to a world where everything's getting a bit more flexible. So I think we're going to arrive increasingly at a place where you might start to engage in the retirement process in your early 60s. You might not end up fully retired, perhaps until your 70s. And how and when you retire is a lot more uncertain than might have been the case in the past, where you had a final salary pension and you got your pension at 65 and that was that. So for those people in their 40s, they need to be thinking about what resources they have available to them, the pension savings that they've got, the ISA savings that they might have, any equity they've got in their property, what their health looks like, because that's going to be a factor for a lot of people as they approach retirement, their employment prospects, and planning around that, planning how and when they might be able to draw an income, and to a degree taking responsibility for that, both in terms of how they're going to draw the income out when they get there, but also how they're going to fund that now, today, and how much they're paying into their pensions to make sure they can afford to retire later. Okay,
now you mentioned ISAs and pensions. Should younger people be with an ISA and older people with a pension, or is it a decision on either or?
No, I think it's a both if you can. So with the auto enrolment program and the employer contributions going into pensions, if you're in employment, if you're being put into a workplace pension and getting that employer contribution, it's a no-brainer. Take it. That's very straightforward. And probably if you can top it up with some more money as well, do that. You might want to invest in an ISA alongside that, and I accept there's questions of affordability, but the great virtue of ISAs is their flexibility, is being able to draw a tax-free income from them, unless the government ever changes the rules, but you get the tax-free income from the ISAs, and you don't have the same restrictions on the ISAs that you do with the pension funds. So I think the two work in harmony.
Now, just looking at a little bit of detail around when the retirement age increases, and also if someone has private provision, if someone has a workplace pension, how is that affecting the age you might be able to take that pension, either a private pension or something from your workplace? How does the changing retirement age that the state is saying is the retirement age, how does that affect everything else?
And this is where I think this traditional model of you retire on a set date is becoming increasingly outdated, and where you're going to get people drawing maybe their private pensions and their state pensions at different times, and perhaps using ISAs to bridge the gap between the two, for example, or perhaps using a drawdown plan early on in retirement and then annuitising perhaps in their 70s. So this again is where people need to be perhaps a little more flexible in their thinking, and perhaps not drawing their workplace pension on exactly the same day as their state pension. Some people will continue to do that, but I think how and when you draw on your private savings, including your workplace pension, will depend to a greater extent on your working patterns rather than simply on when your state pension falls due.
Now, earlier you mentioned health, and there might be a situation where the government's very happy with the life expectancy is increasing, they've increased the retirement age, but what happens if people can't work in their 60s because they're unable to, because they're not as well as they were, or they've got some condition which slows them down? What can an individual do about that?
That's still a really big unaddressed issue. Now, one simple point is if you are buying an annuity, clearly you need to disclose your health conditions to make sure you get the best possible annuity that you can. And that's really important because it can make a huge difference to the amount of income you can get. But going beyond that at a sort of deeper policy level, part of the solution to the pensions crisis is keeping people in work. Because if you're not in work and you're not earning an income, it's very difficult to save for retirement. And part of the problem is people falling out of the workplace in their 50s, perhaps initially through ill health, but then never getting back into employment again. And so I'm not suggesting there's an easy answer to this, but I think one of the key policy challenges is trying to keep people in employment through their 50s and into their 60s to help them to build up their retirement savings. And from an individual's point of view, again, it's perhaps being flexible in your thinking about how you can earn an income, and being prepared to consider changing occupations or adapting how you generate income for yourself to try and keep that working life going for as long as you can.
Now, final question. This might be slight risk of trading in national stereotypes here, but it might be suggested that, say, for example, across the Channel in France, were they to simply increase the retirement age, they might have an issue with some people manning the barricades. Let's say the protests might be a little bit more visible than they have been in the United Kingdom. So what are the British, do you think, taking this lying down? Should they be more opposed to this rising retirement age?
Well, it was interesting to see when the government started monkeying around with the public sector pensions, they were indeed manning the barricades. So I think culturally, whereas we can be as inclined to protest as the French, I think perhaps the reason we've not seen any outrage over this issue is, first of all, there was a general acceptance this has to happen, but also for those 20-somethings and those 30-somethings, I think they are more detached because it is slightly abstract so far in the future. A year here or there, in the end, it perhaps doesn't matter quite so much. It's difficult to get quite so angry about it when it is still 30 or 40 years away.
Thank you, Tom, for talking to Mindful Money today.
Thank you.